Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew. I am coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, as always, and I'm joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's dark outside. It's a little rainy. I'm going to make the announcement that we are live to our Discord people
Oh
because I
yeah,
forgot to
that.
do that.
Go do
But
that. Go do
having a good
that.
time.
Yes. Yes, it's great. It was sunny out. It was weird. I didn't get enough chance to go outside today, but here in Toronto, but I gotta fix that. I gotta maybe hopefully fix that tomorrow. This week we are talking about what was the most controversial Star Wars property to come out in 2017. Luke himself warned us this is not going to go the way you think. Turns out it was even better than we could have imagined, with its wild twists and thrilling turns, deep reflection, and vibrant action for a 100th episode, because we wanna. Why not?
We will.
We're talking all about one of our favorite films of all time. I don't know about you. I know about you, Joel. I don't know about the people in the audience, but The Last Jedi, one of the greatest films of all time. Um,
Controversial. I'm going to put air quotes.
Controversial. That's a good point. We'll definitely get into that. I'm sure we'll get into the reception of this film. First off, let's get the plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Threads at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Don't know how to spell it now. EYEONCANONPOD. Here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we got YouTube memberships and super chats, and of course the Star Wars Underworld Discord server where Joel and I are in there. We're chatting. Ben's in there chatting. I think Chris Sequel, Chris Abbott's definitely in there. But a whole bunch of folks. You're in there. Oh, a bunch of people commenting in the comment section, chatting it up, making a name for themselves. Getting their ideas and their thoughts in there, and some pretty good regulars from what I can gather, and some regular events. So Joel, what's happening in Discord lately?
Let's see. I don't think we fully decided, but I think Ben and I are going to continue our Star Wars marathon watch
There we go.
this week. Oh, and by the way, if
Mhm.
anyone's watching on YouTube, please like the video. That helps with the algorithm.
Yes. Yep, Thiago. What are you guys gonna be watching this week or
We'll
next
be
week or whenever it
watching
is?
more Young Jedi Adventures because we're still on it. We're still in season one.
That's fair. I jumped ahead to the Batu episodes because I wanted to, and those were
Nice.
fun. Those were fun. All right. No, last but not least. Oh well, first off, the Discord. Check the link in the description below to get in. Just click on it. Click in. Come and say hi. You'll be in. Obviously, we're a fun, inclusive, welcoming community. And so, if you're willing to be fun, inclusive, and welcoming and friendly, then please do join us. The water is fine. The water is fine. Lastly, last but not least, Tractor Beam, the Tractor Beam Comics reviews on the Star Wars Underworld Network. Chris Abbott and I, every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We talk about comics. Comics are for Wednesdays. Wednesdays are for comics, as I love to say, because it's fun and pithy to say that.
Mhm.
And that's right here on the Underworld YouTube channel, and wherever else we throw our podcasts, video podcasts. I should keep meaning to get the ball rolling on audio only there. Again, our interview with Ethan Sachs from a few weeks ago is still there. Last week, there's only one book ongoing, number 43. And so we also talked about the Bad Batch, which we'll talk about again in a little bit. Um, this coming week, I think there's only one book again, maybe two. And so, yeah, we'll get to that. Probably also talk some more Bad Batch because it drops that day. It's fresh in our minds. But comics, always, the focus on what comics are coming out that week. And yeah, because giving that love, giving that niche some love that Chris and I like to do. Because it's a very important part of our Star Wars fandom and our enjoyment of Star Wars. And so get to connect with the comics community in the Star Wars comics community that is very strong, small but mighty, strong Star Wars comics community. Of course, the Iron Cannon podcast being the wider paper cannon community, and just those of us who like to chat Star Wars intellectually, like the Last Jedi. So there we go.
Nerd. Nerds for
Yes, there we go.
nerds.
All right, so I'll dive into maybe we can Star Wars, and Joel, you very intentionally want to make sure the order was flipped, so you have a good
Yes.
reason for that. So I'll roll with it, of course. So speaking of books, speaking of High Republic, I am almost done Escape from Valo. Yeah, quite a I would say good maybe 100 pages to go, less than 100 pages to go. Yeah, definitely
Nice.
getting to the climax. It's definitely rolling along. I'm definitely at the place where, okay, I want to keep reading. I want to keep going, looking forward to when I can keep going and keep reading. And so um, that's pretty good. Again, I don't quite know. I don't quite know why they don't release the audiobook at the same time. It still makes no sense to me or anyone else. But I will say this is a bit of a spoiler. I mean, the Nameless show up in it too. They're
Mhm.
involved in it, and it is kind of interesting to see the Nameless in younger characters for affecting younger characters and having younger characters and younger readers confront these horrifying creatures. And it was interesting. I did have a thought. I had two thoughts. Uh, do do the Nile rely on the Nameless too much? I mean, why wouldn't they if they're such an effective weapon? But does High Republic storytelling in Phase 3, the beginning of Phase 3, is it relying on the Nameless too much? Too, I mean, the comics aren't so much, but both novels so far have. And so I'm wondering, is there more interesting storytelling to diversify a little bit? What do the Nile have other than the Nameless? I mean, they have the Storm Wall, but yeah, in Escape from Valo, the creatures are there. That being said, there is always a clue to how the Jedi are going to actually solve this puzzle. And one of the things I thought, one of the things I've thought for a while is, um, yeah, Reith Silas and Amadeo Zazo and even Aslan Rel and Yoda, they're going to go study the history of the Nameless, and they're probably going to go to Planet X and actually figure out what their natural habitat is and say, oh, they're just starving and they just want to go back home and have their home cooked meal of this natural force planet, things like that. The non-violent solution, if there is sort of a last resort or needs some sort of aggressive negotiations, shall we say,
Mhm.
it's pretty clear that they should think like the Jedi need to think like Bel-Zettifar, and what on was it Fallen Star, how he's the one who relies on all these lay Muggle pilots around and to help at least evacuate the Starlight Beacon as it's hurling towards Irem. That seems to me to be this foreshadowing of there's a moment in this young reader novel where a Muggle character, I'm going to use that phrase, is able to help these Jedi characters keep
Non-force
from
user
getting.
phrase.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, Muggle. I'll say Muggle. Whatever. I mean, we don't have to give money to her, but it's a good terminology. um, you know, to say they're gonna have to step in. They're gonna have to say, "Hey, we're not as vulnerable as Jedi characters are," and so they're gonna have an essential role, I think, and it'll just be how this plays out. So yeah, Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong doing good by all of us of all ages in Escape from Valo. Still got to finish it, but I think it's going to finish strong. I really appreciate where they take Ram's character in this. Gives him a lot more meat on the bone, a lot more likable, and
Nice.
not that I disliked him, but I know some people are, yeah, what's this kid, this unself-aware kid doing? He's clearly a lot. I mean, the Fall of Starlight and being pushed in the situation where he is in this book uh, makes him a
Mhm.
lot more uh, appreciable, I'd say. I mean, yeah, I likable too. You could say likable. The criticisms of him don't hold water in this book anymore because he's grown beyond it, and that's just good storytelling, good character storytelling. High Republic character storytelling across multiple books and multiple media across multiple years. Yeah, what Daniel Jose Older has done with Ram Jamaram, I appreciate that. So, Joel, I've rambled on a bit about Escape from Valo. Again, you haven't been able to start it because for some reason, again, I don't know
Yeah.
why they haven't started it,
Yeah.
but
Well,
what do you think about it?
I want to read a passage from the Rise of Skywalker novelization by Ray Carson.
Well, before
Just.
I say, I mean, any thoughts on my thoughts on
Oh,
the Keep from Valo and all that, or
oh, it sounds like a good book. I hope I'm able to listen to it on Audible
sure, yeah,
soon. I think it's supposed to come out next month, maybe,
yeah, there
hopefully.
we go.
So yeah,
Defy the Storm coming out March 5th, so I will go
yay!
pick that up
Hopefully that's
when
on
I can.
Audible too.
Yes, it
Good,
should be.
better be.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to read a passage from the Rise of Skywalker novelization by Ray Carson.
Yes,
Just a passage, because just why not? Right, right, right,
why not?
right. Falling, falling, falling down a massive shaft. The betrayed, sharp and stinging, a figure high above, black clad and helmeted, and shrinking fast. His very own apprentice had turned against him, the way he himself had turned against Plagueis, whose secret to immortality he had stolen. Plagueis had not acted fast enough in his own moment of death, but Sidious, censoring the flickering light of his apprentice, had been ready for years. So the falling, dying emperor called on all the power of the dark side of the force to thrust his consciousness far, far away to a secret place he had been preparing. His body was dead, an empty vessel long before it found the bottom of the shaft, and his mind jolted to new awareness in a new body, a painful one, a temporary one. It was too soon. The secret place had not been completed. Its preparations had not completed its preparations. The transfer was imperfect, and the cloned body wasn't enough. Perhaps Plagueis was having the laugh after all. Maybe his secret remained secret because Palpatine was trapped in a broken, dying form. The heretics of the Sith Eternal toiled, splicing genes, bolstering tissue, creating unnatural abominations in the hope that one of these strandcasts would succeed and become a worthy receptacle. The heretics would do anything, risk anything, sacrifice anything to cradle their god consciousness. Nothing worked, but their efforts were not entirely in vain. One genetic strandcast lived, thrived even, a not quite identical clone, his son. But he was useless, powerless, failure. Palpatine could not even bear to look upon such a disappointment or dareness. The boy only worse would lay in continuing the bloodline through more natural means. And it was through that the eventual union, unexpected as it was, that Rey was born, the perfect vessel, strong enough to contain all the power of the Sith, his granddaughter. So yeah, let's talk about Bad Batch. Um, yeah, there we go. Perfect transition. But I guess before we begin Bad Batch, thoughts on the passage of the Rise of Skywalker novel? Did
I'd
you ever
like
get
to.
to read that?
I still haven't read it yet. But I will say, I mean, it's going to hit different now that Bad Batch. As I know where you're going with this, what I thought they're actually showing us and actually giving us something at all, and that's what we're gonna. Chris and I went into that on Wednesday. But yeah, no, it's always intriguing to see what a novelization adds and how this one. Yeah, Ray Carson. I mean, really well written, very very gripping, very Lucino-esque, very channeling that Lucino, and that's very high praise, of course. So yeah,
Yes. So Bad Batch. Yes, the first 3 episodes have begun, and oh boy, those were some 3 episodes. I tell you, like episode 1 and 3 are probably my favorite, but I really enjoyed episode 2 as well. Getting to see how poor Hunter and Wrecker are dealing with
Mhm.
looking for Omega, and in the Jurassic Park like engine abandoned laboratory
Oh
was
yeah,
Drengir. I'm gonna say they're Drengir. They're in our hearts. They're Drengir.
yes.
In a
Drinker
world.
and I saw something like it's also Sarlacc, but no, like can you imagine trying to crossbreed Drinker and Sarlacc?
I mean, it's the
Doesn't
Empire.
but don't they know not to mess with the Drinker? Come on. Did you see what happened before? Anyway,
I mean, they're Sith, so it's a
sure.
Sith faction. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's Bad Batch really is kind of having the whole package of just being a great story, but also, oops, oh man, okay,
You're good. You're
being
good.
a great story, but also it's tying all the loose threads and stuff and expanding upon the clonings and the Rise of Skywalker and even the Mandoverse stuff.
Mhm.
Now, actually, here's something I've been thinking about recently after like listening to other people's podcasts, because that's what I do.
Sure.
Um, I know, betrayal of our own podcast. And Underworld. Yeah, I actually am starting to think that I don't think Hemlock or Hux years later think Project Necromancer. I always want to call it Project Resurrection. Project Necromancy.
Similar. It's
I
similar.
know it's similar, but it's not the same thing. That
Yeah.
Project Necromancy actually, I don't think they think this is about cloning the Emperor. I think this is a different thing. I do
Mm.
think it involved cloning a Force sensitive, but
Yeah.
I think maybe they think this is like creating like a evil Captain America super soldier type thing because they're
Yeah.
putting in high midi-chlorian blood into the clones, but I don't see Palpatine just constantly donating his blood every week. You know, like he's the Emperor, he got more important things to do.
Yeah.
So I think there is a Force sensitive in there. Maybe it's Ventress. Maybe it's Ventress who's like in the vat and they're like just sucking out the midi-chlorian blood and then infusing it into the clones to get that, make sure that the midi-chlorians don't degenerate every time they do the science. But
Interesting.
but I do think that ultimately this is ultimately, Palpatine's, like he's telling them one thing, but ultimately, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, make sure you can clone me, and my midi-chlorian count is exactly the same as it was. So when I possess this thing, I can just still be as powerful and evil
Yeah.
as usual.
Sure.
But yeah, overall, 3 really great episodes, a banger start to the Bad Batch, and probably going to be a really good season.
Oh yeah. Well, as you said, as we heard in the trailer, there's nothing of greater importance to the survival of this empire. What I was saying on Wednesday, who does Palpatine think is the only thing essential to the survival of the empire? Well,
Himself.
himself. So clearly, he thinks it's about resurrecting himself and all that. I mean, Necromancer. It's called Project Necromancer.
Right.
That's just in the name right there. Yeah, I can see it's an interesting, not quite bait and switch, but sort of meta comment on, the story isn't going to tell us this is about what we see in Rise of Skywalker. Palpatine isn't going to tell Hemlock or later Pershing this isn't about what you see in Rise of Skywalker. But we gotta get the vibes, right? Get the
Oh, yeah.
gist. And again, I'm always going to think about character. I'm always going to think about who the main characters are, and to see Omega in the center of this, and to see how she deals with it, and how she approaches. She's a blonde-haired kid. When we last see a blonde-haired kid with that M count graph, what does he end up doing? He ends up becoming, as we said, the black clad armor
Yeah.
in that excerpt, right? What is she gonna do? Because it's the Spider-Man thing, right? But Star Wars has always done that too. With great power comes great responsibility. And how is she going to grow into choosing the good, choosing the right, choosing the heroic path and the hero's journey in that way? And so, because she has Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshair, Crosshair, she's pulling Crosshair out of his shell, right?
Exactly.
Even though Chris Abbott was mentioning how his hands are shaking, and you need calm hands to be as good a sniper as he is, and she's gonna help him find. I think she's gonna help him find a new way to be himself, and that's gonna be like you have the note here, Crosshair Redemption. So all these things coming together. Again, I keep saying this so many times. Star Wars at its best works on the mystical / weird gobbledygook fantasy sci-fi level. It works on the political level with the Senate and the clones and all that, and it works on the personal level with Omega's place and Crosshair's place and all this, and so and Rey's place, and the way Omega leads to Palpatine leads to Rey, leads to Return Palpatine leads to Rey. There's some interesting, that Omega has this role in the ultimate downfall of the Sith. It's this beautiful moment, beautiful note. So, I mean, I think even that's gonna come to bear very implicitly. She's gonna continue to choose, like Luke, choose to be to know the real good. And this is actually a great moment in Escape from Valhalla. It's a real. I mean, this is going to be a spoiler, huge spoiler, but I have to say it. There's a whole dialogue in there where one of the characters says to the other, the Jedi, their greatest power isn't their ability to use the Force; it's compassion, and compassion means that they're going to use the Force rightly and in ways that build life and support life. As we'll probably get to a little bit later on. We got to last week. Um, I think Omega. I mean, who knows if she's ever going to be as Force sensitive, but maybe she can be if she's going to learn how to use it. But it's the why, and that's what this show is really showing us is going to show us is the why, and that's why it's important then to have all this lore, this gobbledygook lore, dark arts and cloning, and all that.
Mhm.
This stuff a Beaumont kin wants to get into, but yeah, it's off to a great start, and it's hopefully going to get the attention that it deserves. I'm realizing this. I think I've mentioned this before, that this show, even Lucasfilm marketing, hasn't given as much attention as maybe the show deserves. And that's too bad, because it deserves a lot. It costs a lot less. So why not, put all that budget into marketing? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But yeah, anyway, do you have any further thoughts on that?
No, I'm just kind of curious
Nope.
what's in the tube. What's
Yeah,
Palpatine looking in? And hopefully
that's
find.
interesting. So I never thought of, well, I did see something about them taking blood and infusing Jedi blood into clones. I always thought um, the plan was to clone and clone and clone until there's kind of, I mean, who knows how. I hope they never really. I mean, maybe they'll show us a little bit how an M count happens, how high M count happens. And they never really go into that. The only time they do is when, okay, it's a virgin birth. That's the only way our super high M count can happen. But otherwise,
I always feel like a
cloning,
high M
cloning,
count just a random thing. It's like, oh, some people
it could
just
be. Yeah. Again, we don't know. And so, but for some reason, Omega is the end of this, the end goal of this process. And I'm wondering, again, we're kind of nerding out on the lore here. And the real question is, okay, what does she do with this information? But to nerd out a little bit for a second, I always thought that because there was this cloning, kind of changing the gene pool, diluting going from the Django Fett, and when you clone, it always uh, creates strand cast and creates weird variants and whatnot. I mean, the Bad Batch are these weird variants. The hope is that one of these weird variants, ultimately, because of the degradation of the source code, if you will,
Mhm.
results in a higher M count. I think that was my thought. There's a Star Trek episode all about that, interestingly enough, but and lots of sci-fi about cloning goes into that whole question.
Oh yeah.
So that was my thought. But yeah, it could be. I could be wrong.
Well,
That could be what they're doing.
I
Is
found
infusing.
interesting also that we've always thought the Empire wanted Omega
Mhm,
because they knew she had a high M count, and yet when you actually watch the episodes,
mhm.
the Empire never doesn't even know Omega is super special with the high M count. They
Well,
just want her because they want Nala Se to do the job. She's there
no,
more as motivation, and
I
it's
think
not.
that's a cover story. I
The way that no, because remember Hemlock like shoot down the thing. He knows Omega's in there, kill her. And it's not until Henry, the clone, comes back and says, "Hell, no, wait, she has an IM count. We can't kill her."
Yeah,
Dr. Hemlock's like, "Oh shoot, all right."
maybe that could be the whole Hemlock being kind of in the dark about the plan. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm reading. Maybe I don't know. The story seems to say, um, oh, they really want Omega, but
I mean,
yeah,
they want Omega to get Nala Se to do the job, and then they realize,
yeah.
"Oh wait, we need Omega because she's actually important to the project."
I guess what I'm saying is maybe some people think one thing in the story, and other people think another thing. Because Nala Se thinks they want Omega to make Nala Se to do the job, and so she says that.
Mhm.
I don't know. If it felt like there was this air of inevitability, why else are they taking her blood? Why is now? I mean, Nala Se disposing the blood sample,
Well,
right?
I think the way I read it is they're
Mhm.
taking everybody's blood,
Yeah.
but Nala Se knows that Omega is special.
Yes.
But this is part of the routine. So the Empire doesn't know that Omega is special, but Nala
Yeah.
Se does. So get rid of the Omega blood, and then when they realize, oh wait, Omega is actually special, don't
Mhm.
shoot her down. We gotta keep
Sure.
her alive.
I just anyway. I mean, I think I don't think I don't know. What am I trying to say? I don't think Omega's just there. I mean, obviously, She's not just on Mount Tantus just to make sure Nala Se does the work and to threaten her. She's on Mount Tantus so she can be where she needs to be for the Empire to have her in a secure location. But yeah, there can be multiple things happening at the same time. I'll grant that. There.
Right.
All right. Do you have anything further to say about Bad Batch episodes 1 to 3?
Nope. Can't wait for episode 4.
There you go. Dark arts, cloning, Sith stuff, Beaumont Kin. Speaking of Beaumont Kin, I see what I did there. Rise and fall. We've got some news. A few, three-ish, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish news items, but three categories here. Yeah. So first up, the rise of the Galactic Empire. Right. Sorry, rise and fall of the Galactic Empire. StarWars.com announcing that this came out a few weeks ago, but this is going to be the ultimate Iron Canon book right here. The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. It's a new book by Dr. Chris Kempshall, and Dr. Chris Kempshall is a real world World War I historian. I believe he did his dissertation on World War I history, and he teaches. He's a history professor at a university. From what I don't quite know that, but I know he's part of the academic establishment in World War I studies, in real world, the real thing that happened 100 years ago. Anyway, but he also, of course, has taken a historical lens to Star Wars, and so he co-wrote Battles That Changed the Galaxy. He authored, and this is fascinating, a legit textbook, History and Politics of Star Wars, which looks at lots of real world history and politics that's influenced Star Wars and in Star Wars, or just suggested by Star Wars. I ordered that book. That book is on order. But yeah, as the title of this, The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire suggests, it's an in-universe history of the Galactic Empire written from the perspective of Beaumont Kin a few decades later. It's the StarWars.com article suggests that releases July 9th. And again, this is going to be the ultimate Iron Canon book, taking this real world political history and saying, oh yeah, it's in Star Wars. Kind of crossover that we love to do, the intellectual crossover. And again, an academic historian, right? You and I, Joel, we're all in for a higher education. I mean, I have too many degrees, university education, and that it should be more accessible to people. To take that intellectual approach to the galaxy far, far away that Dr. Chris Kempshall does, and I'm going to keep following that because to get a doctorate at all is something special. But yeah, this releases July 9th. I'm definitely going to grab this. Joel, I know you're going to grab this. What do you think of this book?
Oh, I'm excited. This is my book of the year. A in-universe, big historical look at the Empire. Mm-hmm. I'll be very curious to see what it covers and what various sources it will all. Mm-hmm. I wonder what kind of like format it will take. Is it going to be like a big picked visual dictionary book, or there's like a full-on novel like Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, or just a novel like the Skywalker Family at War book?
So it's interesting you mentioned those two books, because he posted a photo saying that those were the two influences. I don't know if you knew that. Those are the two influences on this book. Was the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, but of course with the Nazis, and then Kristen Maver's Rise and Fall, Skywalker Family at War. So
good. I love that one. That's such a good book. So good. I like that. Should be fun.
Shout out to Red Leader. This is also your official book. I know it's your thing for sure. So yeah, there you go.
I sent you the pictures on Facebook. You check your DMs.
Sorry, check your DMs, buddy. So this comes out again July 9th. Again, gonna be great. Just again, I want to repeat this, right? Like, I would have gotten a doctorate if I could in theology. I still might. I mean, we're all for higher education. We're all for higher education and making that accessible. And so this is actually probably going to be a really great a teaching tool. The way into how history works. Yeah, History and Politics of Star Wars is actually a university level textbook. It's by Routledge. They publish textbooks. At least seems that way. So yeah, so definitely looking forward to that. All right, moving right along. We got some Acolyte news. The Acolyte, of course, the show that we're going to cover here because it's High Republic. Right? We're the home for the High Republic, obviously, and then we can talk about this, but we want to. Collider is reporting a tentative release date, and a few weeks ago we talked about a possible release window. Now we got a tentative release date of June 5th, 2024, which it is a month after the Bad Batch ends, and so got that month of space, and then we're right into we're going centuries before. We're going, well, not centuries, we're going, I don't know how many, 130 140 years before, a month after the 130. I can do math after the Bad Batch ends. So that's that one news, June 5th. Also reports that the Leslie Headland show has tapped Michael Abels to write the score. His biggest projects have been what I'm calling Jordan Peele's racial horror, if you know what I mean. Nope,
Oh, yes.
Get Out, and Us. So that's interesting to know. He's Jordan Peele's collaborator there. What I mean by racial horror is, of course, examining the horrors of the Black experience, the horrors of racism in contemporary American society through horror tropes. And so kind of this genre fandom take on the experience of racism in the US. And so definitely I think it's interesting to know that bringing in this person for this Star Wars show, is it gonna look at racism? We know the Amanda Sandberg's Black, and non-binary, and so and Leslie Headland, of course, is queer. So is there going to be something there? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but probably not. Lastly, the Collider. I think one of the previous articles said I was going to say 50 years. I figured that was a mistake. This article clearly says it's 100 years before the Phantom Menace, and so that'll be about 150 years after. No, 100 years after. Wait, I can't do math. I can still do math. 100 years after phases 1 and 3 of the High Republic, and of course, the show we know is going to be more in continuity with at least the themes and ideas, if not so much concerned with the events, although probably concerned in its own way with the events of the publishing initiative. And so that's why we're spending so much time covering it.
Phantom Menace the show. Let's go.
So it's feeling real. It's getting real. Another live action Star Wars coming out in 2024, in summer of 2024, pretty close. And they got the composer clarified when it's set. And again, it's High Republic in live action, which I'm I'm always interested in, always for. It's still going to be overall my favorite thing in Star Wars right now. So to bring live action into it in a way, in a new way, in a deeper way, looking forward to that. So do you have any thoughts on the release date, on the composer, etc.?
I saw Get Out and I really liked it, so that's awesome. Years ago, I don't remember the music.
I need to see those films. I need to see those. Sorry,
you never saw Get Out? Oh wow!
No, I need to.
Oh dang!
I just know what the premise is, but anyway, sorry.
Really good. That's cool. Surprised in June a little bit because I was sort of thinking they do August again, like with Ahsoka, but I guess not. But I guess that makes sense. Bad Batch is over by May. That's around the time of Phantom Menace. They normally market these things at least a month before. That's how they normally go. So maybe Omar will get his wish and he will get an Acolyte trailer during the Phantom Menace re-release in May. So maybe we'll all be lucky on that. Also, isn't one of the High Republic books coming out in June as well?
I believe so. I think the adult novel.
And that does have Vern in it, so maybe there's some synergy going on.
Maybe.
So cool. At least I don't have to wait that long. So that's my birthday month. So
there you go. Happy birthday, Joel. Happy early birthday. But that's interesting. To say a month after the end of the Bad Batch, because the article mentioned that, and that's the Bad Batch. It's time to end for the May 4th weekend, but of course the May 4th weekend is when the Phantom Menace is coming out. And so to give that just the month and get the buzz, that really makes me think.
You talked about how Acolyte's going to consider itself with continuity books. I mean,
Mhm.
I think this is going to be Phantom Menace, the TV show, if Acolyte has their like is a descendant of one of the movies.
That's true. I mean, that makes sense, a lot of sense too. I mean, we know, if anything, obviously, the live action shows are going to connect to the live action films, especially. Yeah, I mean, it's, well, I mean, the way, the way the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and whatnot have connected to the original trilogy, and of course, the Clone Wars and the prequel trilogy.
Andor and Rogue One.
Yeah, Andor and Rogue One. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. And Rogue One, and this movie called A New Hope. Yeah, it's yeah, I can see, definitely. I mean, it'll have the events of the Phantom Menace in view. We don't know how, and that's just the thing. It'll also have the events of the High Republic Initiative in view, and
I
and
if
have
you
both, and maybe this kind of bridge to see how we get from point A to point B. We'll see.
yeah if you ever see the trailer they released in Celebration, I know how.
Okay. I don't. I don't want. I'll let them release the trailer. Trying to see what novel is coming out in November, or June rather.
I think it is the
Oh,
adult
Temptation
novel.
of the Force by Tessa Gratton. Yeah.
The Vern one.
Uh, yeah.
Huh.
I think, yeah. This is a Vern. We talked about that recently.
Right.
Temptation of the Force. Yeah. When I just want to say, I want to see that's coming out June 11th. So yeah, right there. Oh yeah, that's the Jedi and Lerv. Jedi and Lerv. In my mind, that's more of an Avar and Elzar book,
But it's
obviously,
got
because of
Vern
the
in it,
cover.
so she got
Has Vern in it, so you never know. I mean, they've got to be in cahoots, got to be in conversation. You're right about what's coming. Yeah, what's coming in the film, in this TV series, in the novels. Again, this is the thing. It's more so than any other live action project to date, by far. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be an absolute, like, this happened. You're going to say, remember that thing that happened in the novel, whatever, and that going to be the main thrust of the story. But I think it is going to reward those of us who've read, especially this novel, and everything that, Test of Courage and everything that Verna's her experiences thus far. So sorry.
But Living
You know,
Force, shall we?
yeah. Yes, thank you. Good call. One last bit of news here. Just today, I believe. Yeah, The Living Force, the novel by John Jackson Miller, coming out April 9th. We've mentioned a bunch of that. There's gonna be some Barnes and Noble exclusives. Joel, feel free to be happy. I'm still I'm jealous. Like, oh, the geo-locked Barnes and Noble exclusives. But there is an excerpt. We're gonna get to that next week. I didn't have time to read it today. But the exclusives are including this glorious poster by Oliver Cuthbertson of the Jedi Council. And you can see this poster. I'm hoping there's other ways to get a hold of this poster in a poster form somehow. It is a poster. Come on, guys, do the right thing. I don't know when. I don't know what cons I'd be able to do this, but maybe Toronto Comic Con in March. You
And
never
I
know.
just want to let everyone know, looking at the poster,
Yes.
John Jackson Miller has made it known. Yes, Yoral Poof is not in it, but he will be in the book
Okay.
at great length. So
Okay.
do not fear. Poof is here
Do not fear. That's great. That's
with
great.
pizza.
Yes. Again, reminding me, this is Yaddle's time to shine. This is Yaddle season is in. Right, with this with this image, with this with this thing, and we know she has a big deal in the story. She has a pretty big deal in phase 2 of High Republic, and so she of course, Tales of the Jedi. She meets her heartbreaking demise. Spoiler alert, but yeah, here.
Hear Bryce Dallas Howard's voice in your head with Yaddle.
She did a great job in that. Also, here's this interesting thing. Also announced is going to be this map. I'll bring this back over. Of Quen, the islands of Quen, where the Jedi Council travel to. Again, the full color version will be in the geo-locked version. I'm going to keep complaining about this. Guys, you are never going to hear me stop complaining about this. Come on. Like, there's a line on a map. I can show you. Here's a map here. I can show you a map of North America. And then there's this line called the Canada-US border. And just because, They don't sell it. Just call Indigo. We can drive the trucks up across the border. Happens thousands of times a day, where they ship stuff across the Canada-US border. That's why it's so big. Anyway, this map of Quen, the black and white version will be in every version of the book. I do have it on order from back at Phoenix here in Toronto, so that's good. But this full color version will be in the Barnes & Noble exclusive. In the Star Wars.com article, John Jackson Miller talked about these maps, this map, and yeah, I'll read that out. He said, I've always loved maps, especially ones in fiction. This is interesting. I poured over the ones in The Lord of the Rings as a kid, long before I ever read the books. So I was delighted when I started getting opportunities to add maps to my Star Wars work. I discovered while writing The Living Force that the planet Quen was as big a part of the story as any character. A series of archipelagos. The gem cities of Quen feature in many different adventures, with members of the Jedi Council going to and fro. When what started as index cards on a magnetic board evolved into a detailed place. What started these index cards, such a Random House World's editor Tom Holder helped make it possible to go the next step, getting a black and white copy into every book. That's great. And then yet another step, including a color version with my own travelogue notes. It's the annotated version. Again, I haven't read all these notes here, but yeah, in the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. Man, again, it makes me annoyed, but also super, super cool. Especially mentioning the influence of Lord of the Rings and the influence of geography on Lord of the Rings. Of course, in Lord of the Rings, it's one linear journey through Middle Earth. But here, I mean, it'll be interesting to see this physical geography as a character so much that they need to actually make a map and help us keep track of everything, where things are, kind of in a way like they do like in High Republic Phase 3 with where the Storm Wall and how the Storm Wall moves and what that means for the planets that are there. And we can think of what's behind the Storm Wall and what's not. This is in a much smaller. Naboo, yeah. This is in a much smaller scale, of course. But to see this thought out, this reminds me a little bit of the way the Thrawn Ascendancy novels have the dramatis personae in it at the beginning, just to keep track of all those characters. I mean, that's the Chiss houses are the geography of the Chiss in a way.
How's
the actual physical
Baluto, and how's Mithra Naruto, and how's I don't know any Chiss names,
Yeah. So myth. And anyway, this is so the islands of Quen. Clearly, there's a capital in the middle there, and then all these other islands. So so what do you think of the council photo? We're gonna get to the excerpt next week. I will read it. I'll spoil myself. It's Jedi Council scene. I can't not. Come on. But yeah, what do you think of this map and the poster?
Oh, I love it. I love it when any Star Wars planet or world is a bit more. I want to say the proper term is anthropomorphified, but I might be wrong about that. Where it's like giving a little bit more life than just what Star Wars usually is, which is just the desert planet, the ice planet, the city planet. Like Naboo is exactly what I love about Naboo. It's like it's got a little bit more life to it. Like you got the Naboo and then the Gungans. I mean, that's kind of it. But
well, you have Theed in the countryside and all that too.
Yeah,
Lake House and
so it's got a little bit more oomph to it. Like Mustafar, the lava planet. But so it's like, oh, cool. It's like it seems like he's really putting a lot of a little bit of brain power into like making this map, and here's what the island. I mean, I guess it's the island planet, but it's like, oh, these islands probably got a little character to them. The council scene pretty. The council poster, it's just fine. It's cool. Jarl Poof lacking aside. But I can't wait to get to that excerpt next week. I think you'll like it. Let's just say I was surprised by the stances of various council members.
Interesting.
It's not how it does not go the way you expect.
It'll be the third Jedi Council. I mean, there's one in Phase 1, there's one in Phase 3, and then there's one in this. I mean, of course, different context, but yeah, I definitely curious again to see. Yeah, like you said, to see this mapped out, and it's good books, prose books, they're this specific, very specific medium to have this visual, just to, for those of us who are maybe more visually oriented, to keep our minds. I mean, clearly John Jackson Miller needed this visual, so yeah, here for it. So yeah, this comes out. Oh, sorry, April 9th. Yeah, and again, it's another Ultimate Iron Canon podcast novel coming out here. So looking forward, things to look forward to in 2024. Definitely going to be shaping up to be a good year for Star Wars. Good year for us to have lots to talk about, especially this book. Yeah, Defy the Storm, March 5th, coming around the corner. So yeah, that does it for news. Joel, I think it's time for The Last Jedi to be talked about.
This will not be the last discussion.
Amen. It better not be. It's so good.
What yeah. Okay. Oh, first off, before we get on, just want to we got a couple good comments. Thank you, Thomas. 100. And yes, I agree. Fictional maps are awesome. I love the Lord of the Rings maps growing up as a kid. I have the big freaking Lord of the Rings book somewhere back there. So yeah, so I had a bunch of preamble, like behind the scenes stuff. I'm gonna skip that part for time's sake, and maybe interweave it later as we talk about the movie. Because Last Jedi. I think you and I, Matthew, we can both agree that it's probably, at least in our top Star Wars films. I think it's probably maybe your number one. I kind of lean more
my
towards
number 2, right?
Oh, that's right, Revenge of the Sith, right?
But a super let's saying something, right? Like super close number 2, and Revenge of the Sith is my favorite film of all time. Period. So.
It's funny that I think Last Jedi might be, no, it's like Return of the Jedi, then Rogue One, Last Jedi, so technically number 3.
Still up there.
But it's both in our high ups, right? Like it's certainly of our high ups. That's why we're not doing like a debate episode. Like I wanted to do something that unites us for our 100th episode.
Looking back on a beloved film. That's why I actually
exactly. Yes. So yeah, this film it's something. It's like where do you start with this one? And I guess we can just what I love about this film. I'll just say what the thing I love about this film. Let's just say like one thing. I love the meta. I think that's what I love the most about Last Jedi, over a bunch of other stuff. Don't get me wrong, but I think the meta is like my favorite thing, because this is the most meta of any Star Wars film. I mean, we did a whole episode with our buddy Omar. Hi, Omar, if you're listening. About the meta of the sequel trilogy, and it's just fascinating. Like this is like Force Awakens, I think, has the meta in it too, but this is like the most meta. Like I think this is where the meta gets.
What do you mean by that? Like go into what do you mean by that?
Well, it's like.
I mean, I know what you mean, but go ahead.
Oh, right. Oh, right. All right, I have to explain to the audience. Like Star Wars movies, like if the sequel trilogy is like about something in like a grand sense. Like, it's like, what is the sequel trilogy about? That kind of question. Like, the prequels are like the Rise and Fall of the Republic, and the originals like the classic, hero's journey, and that sort of stuff. The sequels are basically about Star Wars. They're Star Wars films about Star Wars, commentating on Star Wars, kind of almost looking at the tropes of Star Wars. And I think all three of them do that to various degrees. But Last Jedi, I think, cements that fact that this is about Star Wars. Like I'll just say, Luke is sort of my go-to example on why this is about Star Wars, because, after the prequels came out, I feel like, the fans and the discourse really turned against the Jedi because, they thought the Jedi were boring because, they thought they were boring and stiff and like, oh, they all deserve to die. And Rian Johnson's like, okay, well, I'm going to give Luke that perspective. And ultimately, he's going to be wrong because Rey, the Star Wars fan who took all the right lessons from Star Wars, is going to tell Luke, no, you're wrong. The Jedi are worth something. Get off your butt, Luke. Get off your island of depression and help me. Clearly, that happened at the end. And, it's like, that's why the Jedi do not end. So, and we can get into this deeper, but like, that's sort of like the meta discussion that I love about The Last Jedi. And then there's also stuff like with Poe and like, how the hothead pilot who like breaks all the rules is actually not a good thing to have all the time
Right.
because that just causes more trouble for everybody involved. And, Snoke is, kind of nothing, so he is nothing. Um and Kylo is the raging fanboy who just wants to burn it all down and hates it all. Um
Also, the people who reacted against the Last Jedi.
and that too.
you know.
And then Ray, of course, as I said, she is the Star Wars fan. She is
Mhm.
the person who's read who watched the prequels and the originals and took all the right lessons, and now she kind of gets to be a part of the Star Wars story, kind of essentially. So I think that's why I love the
Yeah.
meta of the Last Jedi so much, and that's one of the reasons why I like it because it's like it's so interesting compared to more the other films, which are more a bit more straight,
Yeah. More
if that
literal.
makes it
Yeah.
a bit more literal, a bit more about this is the mythology of the world itself,
Mhm.
which is fine. I like don't get me wrong. I think you can but it's like I think that's just what makes this movie unique. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I gotta pick two things. Well, first of all, to say, you know, Luke apparently only saw the prequels. Ray saw the prequels and the original trilogy. She saw them both together and said,
Mhm,
"Okay, this is the fuller story." So
mhm,
yeah, it's a film about Star Wars and about heroism and about what we think a hero is supposed to be versus frankly what George Lucas was trying to tell us what a hero actually is, the one who chucks the saber and says, I'm going to read my father. um I love the Last Jedi for two reasons. It's such a thrilling ride. The pacing, the pacing, the performances, even the cinematography,
mhm.
everything.
Beautiful.
But also, it's the most. I mean, it's so incredibly well made of a film.
Mhm,
Uh, it's the most explicitly theological thing we've got. I think you have everything I was talking about last week. You have Ray on this rock telling us about life, death, and decay that leads to new life,
mhm,
and then living it, and then showing it, and saying, even the death of the Jedi leads to new life for the Jedi,
mhm,
and deeper service to the Force, and then of course that ties into a real world thing I care about a lot is to use here we go here we go to use some kind of churchy language here. The relationship between tradition and innovation, and how Kylo wants to rip away tradition. uh Luke is afraid of tradition. Ray says, yeah, I mean, that is what I've received. Literally, tradition means that which has been received and
mhm,
handed on. um, I'm going to receive it and take it, and see what I need to do with it and what I'm supposed to do with it now, and how that's supposed to change and how to develop and grow. And we'll get to all that in a little bit, but
mhm,
that reflection on all of it. I mean, again, my real world convictions and commitments uh, to a church body that always is constantly grappling with that. Um, you could say Anglicanism. We're just going to go there. Sorry, bear with me, everybody. Anglicanism, especially, is one that is meant to grapple with the history of Henry VIII, and the history of the English Reformation, and before that, the history of the Catholic Church in England, and then on to through colonialism, the horrors of colonialism, the reality of colonialism, and then on to that, to embracing and struggling, grappling with diversity in our society, and how we can be effectively with people, better being with people, while also saying, yeah, we're a Christian church in the 21st century. What does that mean? So again, it really spoke to me, this film. Those struggles, those concerns, and the hopes and joys that can come about through grappling and struggling with those themes. And so, and there's other themes there too, but yeah,
You mentioned
it really got me.
innovation,
Yeah.
it's actually funny.
Mhm.
I'm actually talk about the Last Jedi novelization, which is the book have you read that book? Have you read the
Yes,
novelization?
that's the one novelization I've actually finished.
Okay, so and we know we're on Canon, we're paper Canon, so we probably should let's talk a little about the novelization too,
Sure.
and we can fit it in. This is actually something I like in addition to the novelization regarding Hux,
Hmm.
because Hux is innovation for innovation's sake.
Yeah.
He's all about the terror weapons and like building
True.
mini Death Stars. It's not as prevalent in the movie. Although it does feel like, you can kind of tell with like things like Force Awakens and a little bit of Rise of Skywalker, like,
Mhm.
people are blaming him for Starkiller Base. Like, this was your idea, dude. Um, and it's always funny that kind of, because I think that's even something even the book itself goes into with like other things that we just don't see. Like,
Mm.
I'm moving around the notes a little bit,
Yeah,
and I
that's right.
apologize. Where it's like you got Hux in the bad guy side, you got Hux. Plus, so Kylo, he's kind of a little bit more aimless, but Hux is more like,
Mhm.
the First Order is gonna be better than the Empire. We're gonna be like, we're gonna build these monstrosities and these mini Death Stars. Like, we're gonna make the Empire look like wimps. And then you got some of the
Mhm.
older generation of officers like Captain PV. I think that's his name, Captain PV, and Captain Kennedy
Yeah, Captain
from
Kennedy. Yeah,
um
the Dreadnought. Yeah.
the who's like an old school Imperial, who's like,
Mhm.
once we take over, we're gonna just restore the Empire, and we're gonna put people like Hux down
Mhm.
because he's so crazy. Like, there's almost like that weird like traditionalism in the bad guy
Yeah.
side too, where it's like they just want the old Empire back, and Hux and like, no, Snoke or myself, probably more Supreme Leader Hux. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're gonna make a First Order that's like makes the Empire look like a bunch of wimps. And it's kind of interesting you got that going on too in the bad guy side. More
Yeah.
novelization than it is in the movie, but you can kind of see it there.
Yeah.
Which is sort of which is interesting. For sure.
So as I
Obviously,
say, I mean, yeah, innovation, technological innovation for its own sake. Hux
technological terrors.
is Elon Musk.
Yes. Elon
Got
Musk built Death Stars. The-
it.
Well, I mean, they blew up and they always have a problem. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting taken
We're
down
we're
on.
still on Twitter. We're still on Twitter, guys. I'm not gonna call
But
it the other thing. Anyway, so
but no, I mean that is definitely something about
yeah.
something about the Last Jedi which I like as
Mhm.
well. And it's funny, to get into the discourse a little bit.
Yeah.
It's funny how Last Jedi fans kind of take the wrong lesson of that too. Like, I think they literally do believe that the Jedi were meant to end and something new was going to take its place.
Mm.
And these are
I don't know.
Last Jedi people who like the Last Jedi. These aren't haters. These are people who like
Yeah.
Last Jedi. Nothing against if you like the Last Jedi and you take that position. Comment
Like
me in
the
the
people who thought the books burned too.
right. It was the book
Yeah.
burned too, or that Ray was going to create a new order of something called, I don't know, the Skywalkers. I remember
Yeah.
those days, and that's not really what Ray's conclusion is. I
Mhm.
mean, whether or not Ray decides she's going to have a Jedi Council on Coruscant Temple in the new Jedi Order film, hopefully that gets made. That's one
Mhm.
thing. We can talk about that later. But the overall thematic here is
Yeah.
no, she's gonna continue the Jedi ways, the Jedi traditions. Maybe she'll have a little hut instead of a big old temple. But maybe she'll still wear the robes.
Yeah.
Master Skywalker. Um, and she has the book, so she's gonna keep those traditions
Yep.
going because that's what her
As we
conclusion.
see in Rise of Skywalker, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully in the new Jedi Order film too.
Mhm.
What form it will ultimately take? Like, is there a council? Is
Mhm.
there like a little school? Is there a praxium? I don't know, but that was the message there, and that is very much
Yeah.
in the film
Mhm.
itself.
So yeah.
Ugh. So yeah, discussion over, everybody.
No, I was
Just
kidding.
kidding. But yeah, that's one thing I really like about the film as well. Um, Especially because it. It's also the most complete movie, I feel. And what I mean by complete, and uh, I don't blame Force Awakens for this that much. I mean, we can debate back and forth on whether it should have gone one way or the other.
Mm.
But Force Awakens is very much an act one of what it knows to be a three-part
Mhm.
trilogy. Which, I mean, to be fair, it does make sense, right? Like,
Right.
I think you can get away with that because you're not. It's not like you're getting two more movies guaranteed. It's
Mhm.
not like some in franchise starters that like think they're gonna have an expanded universe and thus they like it's all like just set up for a sequel and then the sequel never happens.
Right.
This knew it was getting a sequel.
It was being made. Last Jedi was being made while Force Awakens was being made. Right?
But
in
yeah, it would be
development.
made with, like, yeah, Ryan
In
Johnson was writing
development,
this, and Colin Trevorrow was writing this.
yeah.
They're
Mhm.
kind of all writing at the same time.
Yeah.
But Last Jedi weirdly does feel like, like you could just watch this whole movie and not miss any context. Like, it does feel like it ends, and you don't have to make more. I know we people know how people get when it's like, oh, they didn't, blah 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 blah. But
Mm.
or even moving forward with
Well,
the
no,
new
I
Jedi,
won't say that. I won't. Right.
or even like the new Jedi Order stuff.
I will
But
say to that point. I mean, I think
but
so.
but
I'll
it
let you finish your point. Finish your point. Go
but
ahead.
it does have like a very complete film in a sense,
Yeah.
like New Hope does, or even Phantom Menace does, right? Where it's
Mhm.
we know Phantom Menace is part one of the prequels, but if you did know Palpatine was the evil Emperor, and you kind of forgot about some of the sissy stuff, you could just watch Phantom Menace on its own, and that's a complete story. We get it. Naboo's liberated.
Mhm.
Anakin gonna go off training Jedi. Happy ending. Yay. We know that's not going to happen, but it is. And A New Hope as well. Like, that was
Mhm.
made very much as a complete story. The Death Star blows up. The day is saved. Yeah, Vader flies away because we were honoring classic serials. Like,
Sure.
I'll get you next time, Skywalker. But it's like, if they never made a sequel to Star Wars, that would have been it. Just Star Wars. That's it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
glad they did, but you know what I mean, right? So, in
I
a
think.
sense,
Yeah. So I'll let you finish. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
so yeah, the like Last Jedi doesn't kind of. I mean, it does in the sense you want to know what happens to Kylo and Rey's final duel,
Yeah.
but it doesn't need a sequel in the sense of like, Snoke is saying it's time to complete his training, or like, what the heck happened to Luke on the island?
It wraps up a lot of things. I will say
Mhm,
that. I think um it feels like a complete story. I mean, it is its own very clear story.
mhm,
And then if you say, okay, like the serials, I'll
mhm,
get you next time, Kylo Ren, we'll get you next time, kind of thing.
mhm,
Um, I will say, and then because it's such a strong story, it has so
mhm,
much to say, and moves the characters further. And I think
mhm,
if we love Ray, I think it's because of what she goes through in this film.
mhm.
What Ryan puts her through in this film, the way George and I guess Irvin put Luke
Irvin
in
Kershner,
Empire.
you mean?
Yeah, in Empire Strikes Back, right? Is it
Yeah,
or was it? Yeah,
Irvin
yeah.
Kershner.
The way George puts the galaxy through, what George puts the galaxy through in Attack of the Clones, right?
Mhm.
The whole dang galaxy launches it into a clone war. I think. I mean, it still leaves us wondering, needing to know: does the Resistance survive? Does it end up rooting out? I mean, it does end with the bad guys winning, like Empire Strikes Back, like actually in Attack of the Clones, right? Where these white clad
Mhm.
stormtroopers march across the galaxy. We know how that turns out. So
Right.
I do see what you're saying. I mean, it's fun to just sit and watch.
Mhm.
I don't really see what you mean in terms of it does leave us wanting a conclusion to the sequel trilogy, though. It's just that the conclusion we got is all right. Again, I'm not gonna bash. I'm done bashing Rise of Skywalker.
I
It's
I
just,
think
you know what I mean?
I think maybe here's a better example. Here's what
Mhm.
I mean.
Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back.
yeah,
There are threads that need to be solved, right? We
yeah.
have, there is another Han Solo, big one. What's gonna happen to Han? The Emperor. We get a taste of the Emperor for the first time.
Mhm.
So there are things like seeded here.
Well, the Empire still exists.
Well, in that sense, but like not like but that's more just like world building. This is like actual narrative
Sure, I
stuff
see what you mean.
in a
Okay.
New Hope sense. Like, and with Attack of the Clones, it's like
Mhm.
the Clone Wars is happening. Anakin and Padme get married. What's that? With Last Jedi, yet the First Order exists, and we want to know, do they defeat the First Order? What's the final battle against the First Order look like? But in terms of like, there is no, like, hey, we're like, there's no First Order officer going,
Yeah.
we're getting this mysterious message from from planet in the unknown. What's that about? Or
Yeah.
like Yoda going, no, there is another Snoke.
Yeah.
There's no like, and that's fine,
Yeah.
but there, I mean, Ryan does leave it very open,
Mhm.
which is both which I just think is interesting. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's a bad thing. I just think it's super interesting that Ryan did not, unlike Abrams, where it's like Abrams kind of did leave Ryan
Mhm.
to like, who is Snoke?
Yeah.
What does complete training mean? Ryan has to answer what Luke's doing on the island. Kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, that is actually something that I think we got to give Force Awakens a little credit for. Ryan does take what was set up in Force Awakens pretty much verbatim, right?
Yeah.
Luke had an academy, his apprentice screwed it up. Luke hitched it because, like, nope, I'm depressed, I'm out. I mean, he added the more context, but it's like we know why Luke's on the island because he felt bad.
Mhm.
Kylo screwed up and
Oh, yeah.
burned the temple down. Um, so,
Yeah.
but you still have to deal with those plot threads.
Mhm.
Well, Last Jedi kind of nicely wraps up a lot of the plot threads outside of like maybe one final battle.
Sure. Okay. So to your point,
Mhm,
especially with Ray,
mhm,
that central tension of
mhm.
her wanting to know who her parents are, and by that I mean who is she in her place in the galaxy.
Right.
By the end of Last Jedi,
Mhm.
she's found her power. She's found her place in the galaxy. Almost like it made it harder for JJ to come back and write this third chapter because things were already so well set up,
It,
or so well set at the end of Last Jedi. Yeah, there's just
yeah, I mean, even looking at Duel of the Fates, and we can maybe get into
yeah,
the little bit of behind the scenes stuff.
yeah,
I think that ninth one was always gonna be hard.
yeah,
Regardless. I mean, my hottest take on the sequel trilogy is that its
mhm.
biggest flaw is that it probably should not have been a trilogy. I think you almost stopped the story too soon.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I thought it should have been a quicker. It should have been 4.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I'm convinced it should have been. Episode 9 should have been Ray versus Kylo, and the ending with Bendemption. And episode 10 should have been Ray and Ben.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of my hot
Yeah,
take. Is like episode 10 can be the one where Palpatine comes back, and you can
yeah,
do Ray and Kylo got to team up, and then funny enough, like my favorite show, She-Ra, which kind of has a bit of
yeah.
a kind of that trajectory, but I digress.
Mhm.
But yeah, and Abrams has never been good with endings.
That's true.
And Trevorrow, I don't like any of those Jurassic World movies. So I do think you would have had, like maybe in the world where Ryan does 9,
Mhm.
that might have been the best, kind of the best outcome. I don't want to. We have the trilogy we have. I
Yeah,
don't want to like necessarily like play rewrite, but that's I'm glad you and I, Matt, you kind of both agree.
yeah.
Yeah, they kind of the movie sort of stopped short anyway. Um, and again, I am actually not one of the people who think they needed a plan. I don't think you needed to
Mhm.
do that. And in fact, I do think the plan was Abrams gives us the nostalgic opener, Ryan gives us the more Arturi deeper one, and then Colin will give us the grand finale.
Yeah,
And
that
then
seems to be the idea. Yeah,
the grand finale kind of gets a little wonky because they don't like Trevorrow. They bring back Abrams, and then kind of episode 9 is it kind of has kind of it's a
Mhm.
film that's made with a lot of problems
Sure.
inherently.
Yeah.
uh and so no, it's not. I don't think it happens.
Mhm.
Sometimes these things happen. Sadly,
Yeah.
it's not episode 9. I don't think we're blaming episode 9 for it. I just think
Mhm.
it's just kind of how the cards went down, and I mean, I'm someone who also doesn't think you can have the same creative on the whole thing. That doesn't guarantee you great success either. Like
Right.
me and Mando season 3. So
No. You're right there.
I'm good.
Okay.
But
Okay. Take some water. Take some water.
let's let's even a good comment. Oh, we got a lot of comments. Uh, k-
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, we don't get the sense of how big the Empire, the New Hope. Uh, I mean, yeah, I can see why people would think that too. You
Yeah.
kind of get the grand. That is kind of like what else? You kind of that episode 8 is kind of the grandest of grand Star Wars. It's like let's
Yeah.
look at all of Star Wars. One's like I feel like Ryan's like I'm gonna look at all of Star Wars 1 through 6
Yeah.
and just kind of tell a big meta story about
Like
it.
you said, it's meta. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
including 7. I mean, it picks up on everything from 7 too.
yeah. It's
It's,
it's a big. It's one through
yeah.
seven. And like
7
tell a
and
big meta story about it, and I get it. And I think that's why. Episode 8's always going to be special,
Mhm.
regardless of how one feels about Episode 9. I'm not even going to say, or whether it be JJ's, Collins, somebody else's, except maybe even Ryan Johnson himself. Sometimes you can't always replicate yourself.
True.
Um,
Although
you know,
all of his films are bangers.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Although if Ryan had been replaced Colin, I do kind of think I think he would have done something good, but it's like still kind of like with one hand tied behind his back situation
Yeah.
because it had to be rushed. But yeah, I understand what that means in terms of like now everything is kind of more lore heavy and it's fun, but it's
Mhm.
never like it's kind of like that reviewer like says Star Wars has been good cinema 3 times and this is the 3rd time. And then maybe Andor number 4. But yeah. Let's keep going through the film.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Luke because I think the Luke parts are probably our favorite. Would you say?
I'd say the Ray parts for me, but
Well, Ray
go
and
for it.
Luke, I kind of see as kind of a duo. Ray and Luke
Yeah.
on the island.
Sure.
I don't worry, folks. We love the Poe and Rose stuff too, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll defend it.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think, I think what I love about is the stuff you don't talk about because I think not since Empire Strikes Back really have we gotten just a really good lesson on the Force, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Yoda's lines in Empire and Luke's lines in Last Jedi are like, you wanted to explain the Force, show those 2 scenes.
Yeah. Well, it's also Ray's lines, right?
Right, Ray's line too. Ray's
what I was saying
Luke's
last week. Yeah.
Yeah, Ray's lines, Luke's lesson, and Yoda's,
Mhm.
whole spiel in Empire are the best Force explainers moments ever.
Yeah.
We're all over the place. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's good to yeah. Keep going. Yeah, sorry.
No. Yeah, I think that is. But actually, let's talk about another controversy, and that is Luke himself.
Yeah.
It's. I do wonder, if there was ever going to be a way, like, to lessen the kind of controversial impact of what happened with Luke, or this was always just going to happen. The only kind of devil's advocate defense I can probably think of is probably the fact because it's just such a whiplash from the last time you saw Luke in Return of the Jedi, and you didn't get to ease into it in the same way you could have liked, because you are skipping 30 years later, and you don't really get to see kind of a status quo Luke before the status quo breaks with the First Order stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of last you see Luke, he's a little sad at losing his dad. He's with the gang. He's like partying it up.
Yeah, and most of that film, he is igniting the green in a lot of that film.
And then the first,
so it's what we remember. We have the image of him. He just on the sail barge igniting the green, and then the duel in the Death Star igniting the green. That's what we think of him. We forget the saber toss.
And then he tosses his saber again. It's like, I don't want to help you people. Get out of here. Get off my lawn, Ray. Cranky Mark Hamill.
No, that's the lesbian space nuns. They're the ones who are all get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn, Jedi.
Yeah.
And they do explain it, and I think it's explained really well. But it is sort of funny. People have this blind spot where it's like they only see the first half of the film, and then it's like, well, didn't you see the final moment? He did do the thing. He stood up. He walked up against the First Order with his laser sword. He did it. He did the thing.
Yeah.
Technically, I mean, yeah, like that is the point of that. He does become the legend again.
Yeah.
At least for a brief moment. And it's great. But what do you think, Matthew? What do you think? I mean, you love it.
The whole ignite the green thing. It speaks to me of people. Well, I mean, it's just also again a meta thing. J.J. Abrams probably would have had Luke do the thing that everyone wanted, right? Probably would have had him come in saber blazing to actually strike down the First Order and do some wild, amazing thing, like what we see in season 2 of Mandalorian. The end, it was season 2, right? Of Mandalorian,
right?
Where he comes and he goes rescues this kid, right? Mm-hmm. That isn't a critique of the Last Jedi. It's just a different circumstance at a different time, and one where he is more prone to. I think Dom is reflected on this when that episode came out. He is more prone to taking action in that context. It is a more, sorry to say the there's something always good about the childlike imagination of Star Wars and our the images and the bright lights that we see. But The Last Jedi always challenges us to say, don't stay there. There's always more, and you can't be a, I mean, you have to have an inner child, but people grow up, and you grow up and you actually realize true heroism is to throw your lightsaber away, and the response to Luke like that was just such a litmus test, I think, of how people kind of want projecting almost violent fantasies, but also just obviously they wouldn't necessarily maybe go in their own life and do that, but in the sense of they want to have the fantasy on the screen, and they just don't get it. And yeah, it's sad, but it speaks to what another thing I love about this film is, well, what I was saying, and what we're going to get into with Poe. Ryan looks us all square in the eye and says, "You think you know what a hero is? You're wrong." Fast, tell me what a hero is. A hero is someone who stands in front of the First Order with a laser sword and wipes them out. Fascinating. Every word of that sentence is wrong. And yeah, and it shows. So first of all, even in his heroic moments, in the Force projected onto Crate, but even, you have in your notes here, someone who's gone through it, someone who almost killed his nephew in a split second of complete failure. And failure is a huge theme. That's probably another problem people have is we think failure is the end of our lives and the end of our ability to meaningfully contribute to the world. And and I do want to get to Yoda in a bit, because that is, but with Luke, he says, well, that's just it, is Luke reflects that idea back to us. It says, I have failed in this moment, therefore my ability to meaningfully contribute to the galaxy is forfeit. And I just did the thing that it looks like the Jedi in these other films, during the Clone Wars did. Their ability to have a meaningful contribution to the galaxy is forfeit. I have to go off myself in this ritual, this weird thing on this forbidden planet or hidden planet that is sacred, and he does care. That's the thing. Luke believes in the Force. He believes in the reality of it. He just doesn't believe anyone is worthy of it. It's almost kind of make me think a little bit Path of the Open Hand a little bit. And just, I wonder if that was kind of this influence of saying, that nobody can possibly be worthy of following the Force and serving the Force and serving the light. And so, the way Luke mirrors all that back to us, it's just, it's so effective because of, you see the reaction, because of how people reacted so violently towards it.
Yeah. And I think what I like about it, not the reaction, obviously, but I like about Luke is, I think, this is something Star Wars gets slowly better as time goes on, a little bit. It's the first time Luke's feels like a human being. What I mean by that, we talked a little about how in our Death in Star Wars conversation, how, Luke is sad when his uncle and aunt die. And then it's like, well, time to get going. Time to get going. Adventure awaits. I'm not going to think about it again. Here we take a moment to pause and stop and reflect. And it's like, oh, yeah, Luke almost tried to kill his nephew because he's going evil. Right. Shoot, what did I just did? And I'm going to actually psychologically think about this, which is, something Star Wars doesn't always do that great. It's like, let's just take a moment to reflect on our trauma here for a second. And Luke obviously spirals into depression. So that's what I like. It's like to see Luke actually dealing with depression, which is something a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Nope. But then Yoda's like, hey, the greatest teacher. Failure is.
Mhm.
And like, don't hey, don't. It's okay. Ray's got everything she needs to know. I'm going to destroy
Mhm.
this tree because what's actually important is actually gone anyway.
Yeah.
And even if I do wonder if Yoda was like, well, even if I did destroy the books, it's like, Ray can handle it. She's got this. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about Yoda then,
yes,
because like I was shoving into that, moving towards that. I mean, so I do think this also, and I'm gonna bring in Finn and Rose in this as well,
sure.
into this conversation. But yeah, so Luke confronts us with our fear that failure is for the forfeit. I mean, almost to say, I'm gonna go on a thin. I'm just gonna try out some words and bear with me, everybody. Again, uh, Luke's afraid of being canceled, so he cancels himself. And he says, "Oh, I've done this one horribly problematic thing. There's no way back. There's no redemption back." And I mean, maybe I'm overblowing that type of a discourse, but um,
Star
at
Wars
the
Twitter,
Star Wars story,
in universe Twitter.
but at the very least, I mean, the thing but that taps into, again, something we all fear. At the height of their powers, and let the empire, the Sidious rise from the empire and wipe them out.
Mhm.
And then, my favorite scene in the whole film is, and it's just the way he gets revealed. That he's standing there, Luke is there, the cave, and the camera slides, and you have this ear, this glowing ear, and then you see the whole head, and um full of joy and full of the same wit that we saw when we first see him
Little
on Dagobah.
prankster.
Yeah, the prankster is like fighting with R2 about the hot dog, with a flashlight. And then and then Luke's so frustrated, like, oh, I didn't figure it out. I didn't make it happen. I didn't make the Jedi happen again. I failed. And Yoda says, yeah, strength, pass on what you've learned. And that's the thing. He says, pass on what you have learned. Saying, not just, not just strength and mastery, sure, but failure. The greatest teacher failure is. And in my mind, Joel, you and I can go debate back and forth. However you want to square it, Yoda still bears a whole heap of responsibility for letting the Jedi be encapsulated by the shroud of the dark side. Yes, it's primarily Palpatine, and then it's Vader. But Yoda, he could have pushed against it. He could have seen it, and even Yoda himself couldn't see it. And that failure, he takes these 20 years to reflect on this and ruminate on this and on Dagobah and say, "Oh, why didn't I see what was within me? Why did I want to lead this clone war? Why did I want the Jedi to have this influence in the Republic? Why did I want, even what we see with the High Republic, to have the influence in the galaxy? What about that fed my ego, fed my sense of right and wrong over against that of others? And to say, oh, and that's the Force. If all is the Force wills it, the Force willed the end of the Jedi as we know it, which I think we can make a claim. It's the parallel in the Bible is the Babylonian exile. God wills the people to be taken off, and the people, the nation as we know it, is done for 70 years. But the greatest teacher failure is because there's such a freedom in saying we can live and act and do what we do and make mistakes, and the worst thing, and do the worst thing imaginable. There's always a way back. There's always a way through. We can look at tradition and see how it's let us down, the people of the past, and how they've let us down.
Mm-hmm.
Get into my sermon time here. Sermon's almost over. But then to say, okay, there's always room for innovation. There's always room for change and always room for growth, provided we gain the insights of the past, both the good and the bad. So even the books aren't page turners. I mean, he's picking at Luke's fear of tradition, meaning fear as in he worships tradition. He's so afraid of the power of tradition and the Jedi tradition to destroy the galaxy. And so Yoda says, "Okay, lightning bolt, here you go." And of course Luke. And interestingly, here's the reaction. Lots of folks, more traditionally minded Christians, who are like, they destroyed the books, like they destroy the Bible, like they destroy our traditions and whatnot. Completely missing, and this is intentional by Ryan. He's kind of provoking this reaction, right?
Right.
And it's only the split second moment where you see the drawer of the books in them, right? But that's such a key critical moment, because with for Rey, like I said, it isn't about chucking. It isn't about burning the books. It isn't about chucking the traditions. It's saying, what can I learn? What can I grow? What can I gain? Rey and her humility being as part of this long thread, golden thread of Jedi who seek to serve the light. Going back to Qui-Gon, going back to Elzar and whoever, it's it's really, really profound to that. Again, we see this out of the mouth of a character we all know and love, that we think on the surface we're not supposed to take seriously at first. But Luke doesn't take him seriously in Empire. But yeah, then clearly we know he's experienced. I mean, it's not just the fall of the Jedi; it's everything else he's experienced. Clearly, and of course, as a Force ghost, he's coming back. He's looking back through his life and the life of the Jedi and being able to have that insight. But yeah, favorite moment of the film, of one of my favorite films of all time. On that note, I do want to bring in Finn and Rose into this.
Yeah, of course.
Because whenever I bring up The Last Jedi, the first thing people say is, "Oh, Canto Bight. What a waste of time. What a waste of a movie. What a waste of whatever." Completely just stops the plot. And I'm sorry, like it. What
Give
I think
into
is
your
going on there,
anger. Do it.
no. What I think is going on there is this intentional frustration that Ryan builds into our experience of that film, our experience of watching that scene, right? Because it's set up, it's intentionally refusing to pay off the setup, right? It's intentionally refusing to say, okay, here's the plan. They're going to go in, I'm going to find the Plum guy and go to the First Order ship, and they're gonna get the codes, get the tracking. A plan, by the way, fake hero Poe is in on too. That's the hero story. The hero is gonna be one who plans things out and always succeeds and makes it happen. Right? I'm gonna make this plan happen because look how great I am. And instead, of course, they get stopped on Canto by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Be just as they're about to reach the Plum Bloom, whatever guy. Then they meet DJ. And DJ, of course, betrays them, and they get arrested by the First Order. Just as they're about to get to the hyperspace tracking thing. There you go. And then there's the third moment where Finn is about to crash into that Death Star cannon. That would have been less effective, I think. But Rose flies in and stops him because it would be a pointless death. It would not be heroic at all. Finn, even we see this in Rise of Skywalker a little bit. Finn then becomes the leader he can be, and I think we'll definitely see this in the Rey film. Finn will become the leader he can be because he knows that it isn't about making your plan happen all the way through, and it isn't about looking like the great hero. It isn't necessarily about depending on depending on your own plans, depending on the most polished person or whatnot, and certainly isn't about flying Even that's the thing. That's a meta take on Luke, right? On Luke in A New Hope. It isn't necessarily about. Sometimes it is about flying an X-wing into a trench, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's about retreating, going back. And that's where Rose says, "What is the thesis of this film? Uh, this is how we win, not by killing what we hate, like Kylo Ren,
Mhm.
but by saving what we love." And that can mean retreat, that can mean stepping back. So without counterbite, without all those things that Finn learns, that's a huge theme in the story about failure and interruption, right? Another thing I want to say is with DJ, and without specifically, I go to that scene on that ship that they steal, and DJ presenting them with the possibility that they're all the same. The Empire and the Resistance are just all the same. The Empire and the Rebellion, they were all the same. Uh, you know, the First Order and the Resistance are just all the same. The only thing that matters is who can make bank out of it. And Finn is presented with that possibility, and Rose says, "No, hold on a minute. It does make a difference because you can make bank by killing what you hate. You can make bank by saving, but not say out of love, but out of greed and out of hoarding and out of selling to the highest bidder and selling arms. I mean, talk about the thing that I'm going to go there. Arms sales to Russia and to Israel right now. How has that influenced? And the you know the money trail, has that influenced our foreign policy and our approach to what's going on in Gaza, right, and in Ukraine?
Mm.
Without that scene, without the whole dismantling or critique of the easy glitz and glamour on the backs of these kids who have to tame the fathers, on the backs of the fathers themselves, on all the victims of the TIE fighters and the X-wings to some extent. Without that, all you have in this film are lofty ideas about the Force and uh, you know fascinating a character journey with Rey that is wonderful and is incredibly rich, but you don't have the brass tacks. You don't have the concrete real world implications of what it means for the Force to be for the preservation of life, and the forces that go against that
Yeah.
include financial gain and war and the economic benefit of war. But
Mhm.
without Canto Bight, you don't have that. You lose essential aspect of the theme of this film,
And I
and
would
you
add,
lose Finn and Rose's whole character development
and
and
I,
as well. So
and I would add also that it
um,
also makes Last Jedi of the middle Star Wars films the most politically charged out of all
yep.
of them. Even more than Attack of the Clones and
Mhm.
way more than Empire Strikes Back. Um,
Yeah.
I actually have, I won't go into my little spiel, but like maybe in another week, I've actually gone into a whole thing where it's like, you think about it, Empire Strikes Back is actually like the least politically charged of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And I can go into that later, but another day. But yeah, I agree. I think Last Jedi is the most politically charged of the three middle ones, and that
All
Canto
three of those.
Bight.
It's all three of those, right?
Yeah, I mean, all
The
the three of the middle Star Wars films of the trilogy.
No, I'm saying it's all three: theological, spiritual, and ideological, right?
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That too. Certainly.
So
But
yeah,
yeah.
that's my rant about Canto Bight
No,
and
no,
Yoda and failure, and again why I love this film so damn much. But,
right, and let's kind of wrap it up a little bit with Poe. We
mhm,
kind of talked about Kyle at the beginning.
mm,
What I love about Poe is like yeah, I think it's another meta thing. Maybe Ryan was going for. Like we kind of thought, oh, he was the Han Solo of the trilogy because Oscar Isaac is handsome. He's charismatic and he's a pilot. And Ryan Johnson's like, no, he's the Leia of the trilogy.
mm,
Like Leia doesn't want Poe to be a hotshot pilot. She sees him in, the Akbar chair. She sees him as the diplomat and the leader, you know, in the
mm,
command center, like she is. Leia is very much sees Poe for grander things. Future Chancellor of the Republic, maybe.
mm.
and this is whole thing of like Poe tries to be the hotshot pilot who's like making the sacrifices and blowing up the star destroyers, and then realizing, oh wait, no, that's not good long term leadership.
No.
It's not good strategy. Not good tactics.
Gets him a slap in the face from Leia. Deserved slap in the face, right?
And a demotion.
Yeah.
And Holdo kicks his, and then even Holdo kicks his butt later. And then obviously, at the end, by seeing Holdo sacrifice, because I think that's sort of the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Is that Holdo does the big sacrifice because it's the last resort, but also because she is a hero, and it's like don't sacrifice should not be the first thing you do, but sometimes a hero does sacrifice, and that was Holdo's thing. But she's sacrificing because she knows that hopefully Poe is going to learn his lessons and be the leader that they need. And that's actually is continuing to Rise of Skywalker, where he becomes a general. So
yeah.
And I hope we if we see Poe again, it's like maybe he's another general, maybe he's the chancellor, chief of state, of the New Republic.
I mean, even at the end of this film, right? Don't look at me, look at him.
Yeah, like he's the new leadership that we're gonna need eventually. So yeah, I even like the whole of like he's a hothead. I like him. In that final moment where like they're putting Poe on the transport with Leia.
Yeah.
It's so cute. But yeah, that's another thing about the meta of it all with Poe, and I think it's really good.
Yeah. Bullrun makes an interesting point here. Poe in Force Awakens, he's the typical hero in like the original trilogy, like the Star Wars thing. There's even a trench run in it. Anyway,
exactly.
And then Ryan, I mean, that there's a bit of the whiplash there. Ryan flips that on its head and says, okay, but it's not necessarily, lots of heroes, Leia's saying lots of heroes, but no leaders in that first act. Holdo had earned her place as a leader, and so she could make the heroic thing again. Like you said, it's last resort. You don't seek out martyrdom, but sometimes it happens. Right. And there really were dire straits at that point. So, again, another thing, a failure that Poe has to learn from, right? A moral failure that Poe has to learn from, to say, this is what we need. We need to gather, and he says, we need to retreat. We need to hold back. We need to get going, and that again saves the resistance, right? That action, that choice, that Leia then sees. Don't look at me. Look at him. That's symbolic. That's the passing of the torch. Because at the beginning, she's really disappointed in him in that moment for good reason. I mean, she is the place to be. Leia is Poe's mentor. Leia is, like lifelong mentor. If we bring in Shattered Empire here, Kes and Shara. They take from the tree from the Jedi Temple. They plant it on Yavin, and they raise their son there on Yavin, and in the shadow of the Rebel Alliance, right?
Exactly.
And not in the shadow, in the shelter of the Rebel, of at least some sort of shelter thing. Leia's right there, keeping an eye on this kid, and like you said, she wants to form him, raise him to be like her in the best way. And in that moment, she sees the worst of her husband in that moment, I think.
Probably
a little bit, but it was wrong. Then at the end, she sees, okay, he's ready to take on the mantle. And because he doesn't go in like the hot shot guns a-blazing, it is this thing. You have Poe and Leia, you have Luke and Rey, you have Poe and Holdo, but Poe and, I mean, it's interesting. I wonder if there was almost sort of a DJ with Finn and Rose, but not quite. If you could have had Han with Kylo Ren in this one, that would have been something. But we get that in Rise of Skywalker. I really love what they do with this. Oscar Isaac's performance is, of course, Oscar Isaac's performance.
Of course.
yeah, I mean, there's not too much for me to add with this, but again, it's another example of just how disciplined Ryan is with the themes and with the ideas of this film, and with playing them out in all these different characters. They're off in different parts of the galaxy, doing different things, but it's all connecting together and all with the same theme. And yeah, and again, the reaction to this too, right? Uh,
Right.
this definitely picks up on the gender sensitivities, right? I mean, we're in this time where, um, you know, the male testosterone fueled drive to go out and take action and get some or whatever. You know, we need to learn to sit and contemplate and think and reflect, in the way, the way women are just frankly, I think, more capable of naturally. um that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And yeah, and Poe, for Poe to stop and learn that for better or for worse, natural feminine wisdom, and not just intuition, but rationality, reasonableness, to know the you know when to pull back because they're trying to cover the retreat from the Dakar base, to know when to launch the ship, launch the Radis into the Star Destroyer, right, into the ship, right. It's that thing, yeah. So Poe able to be a man and embody that,
Right.
be the man and embody that feminine rationality. If I can put it that way. You guys know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. But let's wrap one last point. Let's talk about the Last Jedi, who's not the Last Jedi herself, Rey.
Mhm.
So I'm actually gonna start off with something that just popped into my head, but
Mhm.
kind of been thinking about it for a while. I think people, in some sense, misinterpret the Rey nobody thing a little bit.
Mm.
Obviously, her being a Palpatine clone, yada. That's a little like extra. That's extra that maybe didn't need to be there, because ultimately, I think Rey from nobody is not the answer either.
Hmm.
It is Rey Skywalker,
Yeah.
because Rey from nobody, Rey from like nobody's like Rey from nowhere.
Right from Jakku. Yeah.
That's what Kylo is telling her, that you're a nobody.
Mhm.
Your parents were nobodies. Um, Obviously, Rey Palpatine is Palpatine saying, I genetically engineered your dad to be my clone vessel, and thus you are technically got my blood in you, so I can force essence transfer myself into you. A bit wibbly wobbly, but it's still kind of the point of somebody's trying to impose an identity on Rey, and then at the end, Rey Skywalker, that's what she chooses to be. So I do think that Rey nobody is like, if Rey's not related to anybody, I get that. I get that part and why people like that. But in terms of the answer is Rey nobody, it's not Rey nobody, because Rey obviously is going to choose who she wants to be. I really did think she was going to choose the Skywalker name eventually, because she felt so in love with the family,
Mhm.
and she kind of becomes like an um, adopted almost sister to adopted child of
Yeah.
kind of all three, Luke, Han, and Leia to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Especially kind of Leia, because Leia trains her.
Yeah.
So, I always felt like that's a little bit of misinterpretation of the Rey nobody. I mean, I get that you don't want your main character to be related to anybody, and that is probably a more powerful message for sure. But I do think, again, when people harp on Rey nobody, I think they're kind of taking it the wrong way
Hmm.
inherently, because you got one more movie, and ultimately Rey did not choose an identity for herself just yet. Um, so that's kind of my whole thing with the Rey nobody situation. I mean, I get the addedness is
Mhm.
unnecessary, but in the same way, like, we still get to the place where I think we were gonna get to
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, this is where Rey really starts to wonder, where does she fit
Mhm.
into this story? Um, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of, like, yeah, she is just kind of like, she's kind of coming into a already in progress storyline. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
What's my point? And she's shaking it up. She's shaking it up hard, for everybody, for Luke, for Kylo, for Leia, for Han. It's like she kind of like she's like the wild bomb
Yeah.
in the storyline, and now everything kind of coming through.
Yeah.
And obviously, Kylo wants her on his side because she's a very powerful Force user. Luke is like, I'm not. Last time we traded a young hotshot, it all went bad.
Mhm.
Leia obviously sees a lot of potential in her, and has faith. And then obviously, yeah, Rey is still. She is the future, regardless. She is going to be moving it forward.
Yeah. Um, the third thing I love about this film, third favorite, yeah. Uh, it's such a testament to how perfect this film is, that the main character is the most compelling character, which doesn't always happen, right?
That's true.
But you pick out different stories, even Star Wars stories. You'll say, "Oh, we don't want to pick the obvious. The main character is your favorite character." Man, you're forced to. You can't help it. She's goes from yeah. That's the thing about Rey from Nowhere. She goes from the dust on Jakku, and uh, constantly, and that's the thing in Force Awakens that is set up well, I think, by JJ's. This, so I got to get back. I got to get back. My parents are going to come pick me up, come finally find me. I depend on them for my belonging. And Maz in The Force Awakens says the belonging you seek is not behind you, but in front.
Right.
And so Rey from Nowhere, I mean, what Ryan said about it, right, is it's like Luke Vader, Luke Skywalker. It's Luke, son of Vader, I should say. It's what is the most challenging, horrific thing that she has to face in order to overcome and become, uh, find her place, find her power, find her family, right? Uh, for Luke, it's of course, oh, he has this legacy of darkness within him. Then, of course, he embraces the legacy of Anakin in him. For Rey, it's, oh, my parents aren't coming back. They did something happen for whatever reason, and I got stuck into Ankar plot, and uh, you know the my on this planet, this nowhere, out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Credit to Adam Christopher, I think does a great job showing us even that it's still. I mean, her parents are still such profound, heartwarming characters
Right.
that. I mean, and I think he drew a lot from what we see of Rey, in that she's able to say, and she's able to say to Kylo that actually that doesn't matter. The belonging I seek is not behind me, but it's in front. And so say she hadn't picked an identity for herself. I keep thinking about the real last shot of the story of of the Last Jedi. I mean, there's the epilogue, beautiful epilogue with Broom Boy,
Mm-hmm.
Timothy Black, but the real shot we see is Rey. She's got the books. She's got the pieces of the Skywalker saber. They're apart. She's sitting next to Leia amidst this family of the Resistance. Right. She's not simply about making her own identity, but finding who she is as a part of the galaxy. Maybe I just want to be more communitarian about that. Yeah, and so Rey from Nowhere is a character device, if you will, to say
Right.
this is where she needs to get to, and so where she does it, and this is again another brilliant, profound scene is the cave. It is in a way it is of course a reflection, a mirror of the Dagobah scene. Um, in a way, it's also Anakin taking out the Tuscans. Facing the darkness within. What do you do with it? What do you do with when you face the worst thing imaginable, right? Anakin, he slaughters them like animals, not just the men, but the women and the children too, who brutally murdered his mother. Luke hacks the mask off and finds himself there, and he goes on a journey to actually again embrace the reality of Vader, but also the light of Anakin. Rey says, "Yeah, okay, this pining for my parents to be my belonging. I have to let that go.
Mhm.
She does look to Kylo Ren. She does look to Ben for it a little bit, but she's looking for that connection through the Force Skypes and the dyad and all that. But ultimately, yeah, she looks to Leia. She looks to Poe and Finn. We see that at the beginning of the Rise of Skywalker. There's the banter. There's the, if you hadn't been around, you only have that place in someone's life if Poe can only have that place in her life if there is a lot of love there already. And it is, again, I'm bringing this back full circle. She finds her place, like you were saying, in receiving the wisdom of the Jedi, in being a part of this long tradition that empowers. And this is how tradition and innovation relate to each other, right?
Mhm.
Tradition at its best, what we receive, what we've learned, what we've grown in, empowers us to go forward and be creative and be courageous, knowing that we stand on something bigger than ourselves, and therefore, I can't ruin, well, for Rey, she can't ruin the Jedi. She can't ruin the Force. Doesn't matter. That's the thing about failure. She can't ruin the Jedi. It's gonna survive as long as she, in part depending on her. But I can't ruin the church. It's not gonna happen. It's fine. um, there's a lot of things that are ruinous, right? But
Right.
so to say, yeah, in this Jedi Order film, Obey Jedi. Sorry, I'm blanking on her name.
Shreem Obey Chinoy.
Yes. No, she's Canadian too. Right? Yeah. So you're going to pick up this wisdom and say, yeah, both the failure and the belonging, both to a family now and to this tradition in the past, taking on the Jedi name. It's meaningful. The Skywalker name. It's meaningful. But also saying, let's figure out what to do now. How do we figure this out now? What does the galaxy need now? And that's always the most important.
Yeah. One little thing I'll just add, because I just thought about it, and then we'll wrap up because we won't have to focus on too much. Is I actually find it funny that Rey's biggest flaw, funny enough, kind of is that she is trying to recreate the original trilogy a little too much, because she thinks she can pull a Return of the Jedi with Kylo, and then Kylo's like, "Nah, we ain't gonna do that." It's like, because she's like, I'm gonna, we're gonna face Snoke together, and we're gonna do the Emperor, and we're gonna kill Snoke like Vader did, and then we're gonna, you're gonna, yay, and then that doesn't happen, and it's like, oh shoot, so my original trilogy fandom didn't work out with Return of the Jedi this time. Oh no. So then she hops out. So that's just one little meta thing. I wanted to say before.
And again, Kylo, he offers her this belonging, but it's a false belonging. It's a subservience. It's not real belonging.
Yeah.
It's getting trapped in this gaslighter, trapped by this gaslighter. She rejects it.
Yep. So I mean, good for her. So yeah. So there's that. But it's getting late, but I think we've done it. Well, we've never truly done it. This won't be the last discussion. This will not be the last discussion of The Last Jedi. But thank you everybody who watched the video. I guess final thoughts. Buddy Red said, after this, you kind of walk out going, maybe they shouldn't make another Star Wars film after that. I think, in a good way, in a hyperbolic sense. I will say this is a film that kind of is one of those once in a 20 generation, once in a 25-year film that kind of looks back at all things Star Wars, originals, prequels, maybe even Legends itself, and kind of like, let's just do a deep examination of this. Let's just like a real deep study on Star Wars, the tropes, and kind of just talk about it for a little bit. Maybe that culmination could have been episode 9, which you'd think it would be, but hey, episode 8, that's fine. And, I think hopefully in another generation or two after we have more just kind of some classic Star Wars. I'm not saying like it's going to be bad Star Wars, we had some great Star Wars like Andor, and even Mando and Ahsoka, and hopefully these films.
The High Republic.
High Republic. But, in another year, another Rian Johnson type will come along look at Star Wars in the 25 years of post Last Jedi and like do another like deep meta dive of like
Mhm.
what is the say of Star Wars. Maybe it'll be even more better received if it's not part of the sequel trilogy or the sequel trilogy. It's just the individual standalone movie.
Yeah.
That's a meta commentary. But yeah, I think that is sort of the purpose of Last Jedi. It's like it is kind of a culmination film.
Mhm.
That's really not a culmination because there's still one more to go. So that kind of comes off weird, but that's why
Yeah.
we love it. That's why I think it's great, and I'm sure there'll be great things to come.
I mean, what it is to say what it's a reflection of what we think Star Wars is in 2017.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's and it asks questions of that. And that's the amazing thing, the amazing challenging thing. It asks questions, it provides compelling answers and provides compelling ways, not so much answers, but ways forward into embodying our deeper, enriching our understanding of what it is,
Mhm.
what a hero is. As
Mhm.
someone, very pithy. It's how we end up by killing what we hate, by saving what we love. Let's tell a 2.5 hour story all about that. Yeah. And so, you know, it'll be fascinating to say, okay, someone comes along and say what we think Star Wars is in 2037 or whenever, 2047. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Because it's going to be probably different. It's probably
Oh
going to be
yeah.
different. Maybe a sense of what a hero is, maybe a sense of what tradition and innovation are. I don't know. You know, there was a report that said the Anglican Church of Canada won't last until 2040. I don't think that's true. But
I hope
so
we're
who knows?
alive to see that.
Who knows?
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, how I don't want to know how old they'll be then. But yeah,
Mhm.
but you know what I mean? Like, it'll always be the Last Jedi, like Rey's task is so what do we need to say in the present about where we're headed and where we've come from and where we're headed, and again, that's Rey's task in the new Jedi Order film. That was Ryan Johnson's task. That is often the storyteller's task, whether or not they succeed, and Ryan just succeeded perfectly and brilliantly. So
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
for now that's all she wrote or all she spoke.
right on, right on. Well, that was a fantastic discussion. I'm really
Mhm.
really happy we got to do that, dive into that, go
Episode
into
100. Let's
episode
go.
100. Yeah, Joel, it's been great. It's been great. 100 episodes over 2 years. And we're
Mhm.
gonna keep going strong. Keep going strong. With not too many breaks. Just pointing that out there, guys. Just pointing that out to myself. Anyway, and yeah, in the chat, great comments, great commentary in the chat. Sorry we couldn't get to every comment, but keep it up. Keep it rolling in there. You know, everything. These comment boxes aren't going away. Feel free if you've watched this later to just add your comment there. I was watching a YouTube video from a few days ago. That was a StreamYard kind of podcast, and I commented in the comments there, right? Not necessarily in real time, but still, it's there. So feel free to let us know if you love what we said, if you disagree with what we said, if you dislike The Last Jedi, as long as you dislike it for good reasons. That is fair game. But of course, Joel and I just love this film.
Mm.
Yeah, so let us know, and yeah, like Joel said at the top, please do like this video, subscribe to the channel, especially if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. Yeah, and then let's give the channel a subscription again. So, and yeah, where can they find you on the internet? Sorry, I'm discombobulated. Where can they find you on the internet?
No, I felt that way all day. I'm like, wonder why.
Yeah.
Yes, you can find me at JID 20 JID 2012 2021
Yeah.
at Twitter. JID 2021 on
It's on the screen.
Twitter. And of course at the Ion Cannon Pod at the Ion
It's
Cannon Pod
Ion
on
Cannon Pod. No,
at Ion Cannon Pod on Twitter, where I've been doing a lot of being very active lately,
Mm.
retweeting, commenting, trying to engage with our audience. And of course, you can always engage with us, especially me, on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. I will probably always get back to you if you ping me directly for the question
Yes.
or comment.
It's a guarantee. within half an hour if he's up. I don't know if that's true, but I'm just being silly. Guaranteed, Joel. We'll get back to you. I'll get back to you too if you ping me in there. MNEUG 1138 on in Discord, also on Instagram and Threads, Twitter, NEUG 485, and of course at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEOMCANONPOD on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Of course, Tractor Beam this Wednesday at what am I doing here? Tractor Beam this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, the flagship podcast, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Thursday, they're definitely talking about the Bad Batch. I know that for a fact. Probably maybe among other things. I don't know. But yeah, please do. Yeah, again, give the Underworld channel a subscription and, hit that button. You'll get the flagship podcast. You'll get the Iron Cannon podcast. You'll get the Tractor Beam. You get all these goodies. Check out the rest of the network, of course, the Rayside, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, and everything they're doing over there. Next week, we are, what are we doing? We're talking about 101, Political Philosophy 101, episode 101, Political Philosophy in Star Wars with some really fantastic special guests. Looking forward to that one. Joel, 2 hours, right on the money. Let's blow this thing, or not blow this thing. Let's save what we love.
Yes.
And head home.